Morning, members. Welcome all. On behalf of the committee this morning, I'd like to welcome George Graham and Fiona Miller from the Scottish Police Authority. Welcome back. Members, it's my intention to take item 5 in advance of items 3 and 4 on today's agenda. The reason for this is to enable colleagues in the Fire and Rescue Service to undertake other business. Is that okay with members? And just a reminder as well that this meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. So watch what you're saying. Item 1, Sederunt apologies. Claire, have we got any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Foster this morning. Councillor Brodie, currently not present.
Thank you. Members, any declarations of interest? None. Okay, we'll go on to item 5, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan First Quarter Performance Update, 1st of April 2016 to 30th of June 2016. Report by Director of Communities. This report from the Fire and Rescue Services provides members with information on the service performance during the period April to June 2016. The information provided should enable members to scrutinise the performance of the Fire and Rescue Service. We have Alan Fairbairn, Local Senior Officer, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, with us to speak to the report and answer any questions members may have.
Chair, thank you. Once again, I'm pleased to present the Q1 report for the area in agreed format. I'm also hopeful that the format has, and our own analysis provided in the narrative of our understanding of the statistics has given enough information to members to have an idea of what their performance is looking at, and also to inform their scrutiny arrangements. I'm being conscious of time. It's not my intention to go through each and every single indicator in detail, or however, if that's the requirement, I'm more than pleased to do so. But I would hope that the narrative provided for each indicator, along with the short summary provided by Council Officer, has provided enough background to assist members' questioning. However, in general, this is again an extremely pleasing report, particularly with our primary indicators showing pleasing trends, and in some cases bucking the national trend. For example, dwelling fires, accidental dwelling fires, if I could take you to that particular indicator. The numbers for this are 18 for this particular Q1 for this report, and against the other previous 5 years, there is a downturn. Now, that is one indicator. It is our prime indicator for really our success. It's one that we place most emphasis on, because not only is it dwelling fires, but the consequential injuries that go along with that, and ultimately fatalities, are generally within the dwelling setting. So accidental dwelling fires is a main priority for not only the Dumfries and Galloway area, but the service as a whole. Unfortunately for the rest of Scotland, and many areas of the rest of Scotland, dwelling fires has plateaued over a number of years now and has started to reverse the trend. However, it is incredible, and I'm pleased to report that Dumfries and Galloway is still receiving an improving picture and reducing the number of dwelling fires, and that can only be taken, I can only align that reduction and constant improvement in performance down to the work of our personnel and also our partners who are working across sectors on the prevention agenda. Another area which is showing great improvements is the fatalities and injuries for Q1. Now, that won't be representative across the next quarter coming up. There will be a different report coming to members, but for Q1 between April and June this year, it's extremely pleasing to note that it's a zero factor across both of those indicators. There is a separate report, so the narrative provided for that is obviously very short, because there's nothing to record. However, in the supplementary report on the next agenda item that I provided is a analysis of 3 years of fatality reports for the whole service, and I gave an additional summary report on the Dumfries and Galloway context with regard to those particular two elements. Other than that, Chair, the other indicators where there is a more problematic trend is in deliberate primary fires, deliberate secondary fires. But in conjunction with our colleagues in Police Scotland, these things, the numbers are relatively small for the region and compared to the rest of Scotland. However, we're not complacent, and all acts of deliberate fire setting, whether it is in a primary location or secondary fires, which can be more problematic for a nuisance more than anything else, are taken into account. And for example, when we had secondary fires, we identified there was a young individual who was being problematic in that area, in conjunction with our colleagues in Police Scotland, and also using colleagues in other particular areas of Scotland who had expertise in dealing with kids who maybe had a problem with fire setting. They utilised their skill sets to make an intervention. That's a good news story, turning that one round. But again, we're not complacent. Keep an eye on all the deliberate fires, whether it's the second. I'd like to, if you, with your permission, Chair, if there's any questions or any particular items that you'd like to go into detail, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Alan. I'll open that up to members.
Councillor, it's not just cooking is certainly one of our biggest causes of accidental fires in the home and the setting. Sometimes there is additional consequences or contributory factors, and alcohol is only one of them. But for many years, the fire service thought that alcohol was a major cause of fire, and when we started really drilling down over a number of years now into the actual statistics, that's not necessarily the case. You'll probably note from that additional report, which is in the next sector, looking at fire injuries and fire fatalities, it's the ageing population that is having a major impact on these numbers. If you look at our fatalities and injuries, it's mostly between the 60 to 90 age group, between 60 and 90 years of age, is where we're having those effects, and that is a societal, across all agencies are experiencing this and looking on horizon for this emerging risk, which is the elderly population, which is a good news story in many ways because we've got a lot longer longevity in our life. However, we have to accept that there's going to be more incidents and issues caused by living longer in the home, and until full wraparound services go around from all agencies to ensure that people living alone are as safe as possible, including safety guidance and possibly the use of technological care or technological systems to assist cooking safely in the home. What I mean by that is there is appliances now, the IntelliCare systems that you can get, which will cut off electrical systems and cookers if there's not a presence being maintained in the kitchen. So there is a technological fix along with the education programme, but that needs to be supplemented across all agencies by full support for an emerging elderly category of our population.
Any other members? Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a question about whenever there's no clear trend that emerges for a rise, for example, in a reporting figure. I mean, clearly, if there is a trend or a pattern, then it's easier to target resources and work with other agencies to maybe identify, such as in the case with the individual who was maybe causing fire setting, as it were. But I mean, there's a number there, for example, the false alarms, and even in the, I think it's the deliberately accidental dwelling fires, and also the primary fires, where there's no clear pattern. So there's a kind of uniform rise across the region, for example. And obviously a lot of the work will be preventative, as a sort of, there'll be a continuous effort to get out a preventative or protection sort of message. What sort of resource implication, what's the difference whenever there's no pattern, so therefore you can't target resources, but there's a general rise? So does that have a kind of additional burden on how you go about getting out a preventative message, for example, because you don't know where to target the resource, if that makes any sense?
Absolutely, it does make sense. And sometimes the numbers, thankfully, the numbers are so small in Dumfries and Galloway for most indicators for us across quite a widespread region that sometimes it's very difficult to pin down any particular trend. What I would say is that if there is any incidence of any note where there's, as you'd imagine and you would hope would be the case, If, for example, there's a fatality, there's a full investigation, possibly a case conference involving multi-agencies, if that's appropriate, to determine the full facts and see if there's any learning to be determined from that particular instance. If I move to maybe road traffic collisions as another example, though, we've got a number of road traffic collisions. It's a thing that I'm concerned about, the number of fatalities that we're having in the region. Again, there's no real pattern to that, but what may inform that, whereas you might have a road or a particular area or region where you have had maybe 1 or 2 fatalities, but there may be cumulative smaller incidents at that location. So by examining that, you may be able to determine causal factors, and then that would therefore inform the preventative approach that we've taken. Other than that, it really is just a blanket approach of things we've done before that hopefully sometimes it's very unquantifiable, that we are teaching primary school, but we're going through a Operation Safety as we speak, a 3-week programme of teaching primary school age children on various factors across multi-agencies. There's other programmes for different age groups, there's elderly groups, and there's bespoke packages for really vulnerable persons and individuals when it's required. And that, the evaluation of those types of programmes is very difficult, but we can only go by the stats that must be working in somewhere, or that it's a long-term investment you're actually making by putting that prevention in front of, but it's not being caused by any particular trend. We think it's the right thing to do. It's professional judgment in many cases, and this is the right thing to do. And again, it will be long-term numbers and trends and statistics to inform whether those particular preventative approaches have been successful or not.
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just take you back to the earlier point regarding the fatalities over the previous years. I appreciate we haven't had any in this particular year so far. But just looking at the table that you have on page 48 of the second part of your report, the additional report there, 5 out of those 6 fatalities, as you say, relate to the over 60s. And that raises some sort of concern as to just how the elderly population are more vulnerable to fire incidents, and unfortunately in this case, deaths from that. I'm trying to find out if there's a particular reason from that, and I take your point in the narrative that you gave previously. But further down there, 4 of those particular deaths and the fires were caused accidental, but that doesn't give us any information as to how they were caused. And because we don't know that, I don't feel it gives us information that we could take any action to help protect the vulnerable in these sort of cases. All we've got is accidental fires. I mean, if there was something coming out of that, whether it was electric blankets or open fires that were spilt out, and it's the type of thing that the elderly tend to do. And I think just a little bit more narrative or explanation on that would help us maybe find a way that we can help you, take mitigation towards that, whether it's through education, through the elderly, or we could go into day centres and we could talk to them about the various reasons and that. But it just says accidental for 4 out of those 6 deaths. So I would like something more to try and drag something more out of here for that, just for the benefit of us all to see if we can help and protect them.
The only thing I could counter that, you'll probably see that the next 5.5 down combines all fire casualties and gives a more defined area of cause or what was the main factor involved, whether it was discovering the fire, coming across it, and then 5.6 gives an overview of the main causes. I couldn't be specific, and I wouldn't like to be specific about any particular instance in this type of report. However, suffice to say that when, as I mentioned previously, Councillor, when there is a fatality, there is a full investigation carried out by generally police and fire. However, that extends out very quickly if there's any other agencies involved. So if the individual or the victim was under care of social care, if there was mental health issues, if they came under the radar of any other agency, we want to have a full understanding of what the causes. Was it preventable? Was it not preventable? Is the first thing we'll ask and try and determine. If it was preventable, we then start asking, okay, who knew about this individual? Why wasn't any referrals passed on if it was a mental health, if it was a vulnerability, if it's an elderly person being discharged from hospital, as an example, when they were maybe still vulnerable? back to living alone. Why weren't the other agencies given that type of alert? Now, we need to strengthen those connections between all those departments. And I'm pleased to say that now you've got health and social care integration coming together. They're flexing out their arrangements. I'm hopeful that now those arrangements have been becoming more robust, that the connections in both the preventative agenda across all departments will be more combined. The training and awareness of all staff members from different groups will have an awareness of other agencies' agendas and what they should be looking for. For example, instead of our personnel just going in and doing a home fire safety visit, looking specifically for fire instances, we're now moving to training for a home safety visit, where our personnel will be looking at, as an example, in an elderly person's home, slips, trips and falls. Is their pathways clear? Is there broken slabs? Could we refer that to the appropriate agencies of the council? Are we looking at instances of vulnerability or abuse? Would we push that maybe for the police partners to make some more inroads, or to social services, social care? So it's a case, as far as I'm concerned, of strengthening those ties, raising awareness across all our staff, so that no matter who goes over the door of that particular individual after any particular incident, that's when we get the learning from it. That's in the front face, no matter who goes over the door, they're identifying the issue, or if there is an issue, and referring it to the most appropriate agency or agencies to make a combined effort.
And the same point, Stephen. Councillor Grimm.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's going on to following up what Craig said earlier, the fault in equipment or appliance. Over the last few years, we did a replacement for faulty blankets. Are we still doing this?
There is blankets available. It's not something we do as standard now, but we do still have some left in the area that we can tap into. So in the most vulnerable, it's not a blanket approach, it's not a universal service we offer. However, if it's done on an evidence and risk-based approach, it's something that we could provide.
Yeah. Thank you.
Graham.
Thanks, Chair. You indicated that one of the what do you call it, fires, the deliberate secondary fires, you indicated that a high proportion of them were caused by one person. Now, what I'm wondering is, well, two things. One is, I would expect the next report we get, if it's been dealt with, that those fires will be much lower. But the second point was, what help does that guy get, or might be a guy or a girl, what help does that person get? Do you rely purely on the judicial system to deal with that, or is there any backup where you talk? I mean, it can be a cry for help, or it can be just a bad wee devil. But I just wonder if there's any way that you talk to them, or trying to get them to not do it again.
Because when we identify someone who has a tendency, particularly young persons with a tendency to set fires, we have fire set teams. Now, we don't have that specialism in the area at present, but one of the advantages of being a national service now is that those two instances, two recent incidents where fire setters have been identified in this area. And the first one, we drew down colleagues from North Lanarkshire who had a community action team who had an individual with that background and could assist. So they were brought down to assist and worked with that individual. And the other one was from East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, another area of fire service up the road who had that specialism. Now, what they would then do is work with the individual. They explain the consequences of fire. They let them see the fire engines. They let them see the individuals. So that they get a bigger understanding of the consequences of either phoning in a false alarm is another one where that maybe become problematic, or indeed setting secondary fires, or particularly setting fires in their home if people are really troubled. So there is absolutely a resource that we can tap into. It's a programme, it's not just a judicial system that takes place, it's more of an education. And that particular programme is called Fire Setters Programme, is really successful in turning round, because most kids have a fascination with fire, and if they understand what a fire station is like, when they get to know the actual firefighters, meet them personally, and they speak to the individuals and give them an understanding of their role and the consequences of their action if they're out at a false alarm or a secondary fire that's been maliciously set by the individual, that their home may be on fire and their family may be in danger. When that message starts getting compounded into them, we generally have quite a high success rate with that programme.
Could I come back to you just quickie? Before we had Fire Service Scotland, did we have that expertise for rehabilitation within Dumfries and Galloway?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, back in, Steve.
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, it's again on the deliberate secondary fires. It's just, I'm reading out a sort of Appendix 3 where it's got we actually received it a wee bit, just not long before the meeting actually, but, and I'm trying to tally up the sort of information. It's just how best to interpret the figures, because I know in your narrative on page 38 there you've got dry and warm weather may have been a contributing factor, which suggests that it's not deliberate, because that's a kind of, that's not an agent actually doing that. It's just the sort of environment, if you like, and the conditions. But obviously there's a bit in there which it relates to refuse, crops, grass, woodland, etc. And I know you've sort of singled out the individual, the young person, but is there an issue there with particular landowners or land managers in terms of burning stubble or crops or things like that? And is that something peculiar to more agricultural or rural areas? And should there be another indicator effectively? Because that's could be deliberate, but it's actually not in a dwelling. And I notice in your one of your action points at the end of this prevention and protection document, you've got to analyse and report on accidental dwelling fires in more detail and include information on their severity. So I'm just wondering, does that indicator need to be broken down or separated a wee bit just to determine the difference between dwelling and non-dwelling fires? Because in a rural area, obviously crops and fields might get sort of burnt for stubble or whatever it might be, that kind of thing.
With regard to secondary fires and the category of dry and warm weather may be an indicator, there is a direct correlation between the rise in secondary fires out with whether it's rubbish that's been set on fire or indeed grass and stubble, because the environment is more opportunity, it's not wet, so it's easier for the kids to light and move away. So there is a direct correlation between deliberately set secondary fires and warm weather, as you would imagine. Over and above that, there is what we call muir burning, and the muir burn code to allow farmers now, on the run-up, on a seasonal approach, we tap into all those farmers, we give the advice out, there's a seasonal campaigns to raise awareness about muir burning, to give them the parameters of it, who they should be informing, what's allowed, what's not allowed. There is we have had some problems in the past with one or two individuals just not taking my advice, but that's something that we deal with on an individual basis. With regard, what was your, sorry, could you make the final point with regard to dwelling fires?
Yeah, sorry. Because this is talking about deliberate secondary fires, I think obviously you've clarified there that the conditions lend themselves to somebody deliberately setting a fire because it's drier. So understand that. But I think it's more the separation maybe between we don't have an indicator for all deliberate non-dwelling fires, if you like. It all relates to, obviously that's the main concern, but I think in a more rural area where there's maybe a higher opportunity, if you like, for fires that aren't related to a dwelling, but could be to do with land or external things like that, where there's maybe not normally people about. We don't have a sort of separate indicator for that, if you like. And I'm just sort of conscious that in your report, your prevention and protection document is looking at trying to dig into that that maybe statistic in more detail. So I'm just sort of curious, is that another indicator we should see, or is there not enough to justify separating it out? It's really just in the table in that document on page 16, and it's got a kind of casualties by property type table. So within that you've got non-residential, grassland, woodland and crops, agricultural, etc., all of which are itemised in there, but they're not an indicator for us to look at, if you see what I mean, normally. So it's more just a question about the reporting and the indicators that we're looking at.
Chair, the report format that we gave, I could give you as many indicators as you want. The fire service can provide as many indicators broken down, but it would be pages and pages and pages, because we go right into as much detail as required for reporting arrangements for the government, for our own reporting, for our own analysis. So the indicators that we have, the KPIs for us, for the fire service, are immense and massively ranged scale. Where we talk about deliberate primary fires and secondary fires, primary fires includes all property types, where there is property in a financial aspect to that particular property, whether it's a car, a building, a dwelling house, a factory, some outdoor structures as well, where there's a monetary value. We class them as primary fires. Secondary fires are the one where there's maybe a less of a monetary value, grass, refuse, a few other things. So that's how it's broken down. We further break down accidental dwelling fires because, believe it or not, deliberate primary fires is not a major problem for us. That is would be seen as a major crime for police colleagues would agree that would be a major crime, and it's not generally a problem. It's more the accidental dwelling fires. So when we're talking about deliberate fire setting, I think the unless you would like something changed and broken down further, those categories allow us to identify the seasonal, disruptive, antisocial behaviour, which is generally secondary, deliberate secondary fires of waste and grass being lit during school holidays, as an example, or deliberate primary fires, which tend to be predominantly cars, people setting their cars on fire or other cars on fire, maybe a couple of the property. Not I think those two categories would certainly give me and my colleagues enough information to direct or monitor trains to see whether there's intervention needed, whether there's discussions with police colleagues required in a particular aspect. And I'm hopeful that the actions that have been taken in terms of fire setting and holding people to account, investigations that take place when there is significant incidents, that we're on top of them.
No, I think that, I mean, I don't want to introduce something else if this is enough, and I think the way you've explained it is actually really helpful. I think what drew my attention to it was that the young person who was identified accounted for 4 of the fires, but the increase was actually 20. So I'm thinking, well, there's 16 there that aren't that young person. So I'm just thinking, it was really just, there wasn't really as much of an explanation about that, and I just wondered if it needed to be broken down further.
It was more to do with the seasonal. So we were putting it, there's no trends. There's only another 16 knowledge that spread over the whole region for that whole quarter during a hot period of weather. It could be a very small fire in a piece of grass being fire. Now, crews need to report it. It could be simplistic as that.
I just wanted to sort of focus on the preventative work that everybody takes. And I was looking at page 17, and it's to do with the building safer communities. I just wondered, you talk a lot about partnership work, and the only thing I'm aware of that the council's involved in is the community safety partnership. But within the report, you do make reference to several initiatives that's going on. And we know some of them, like the young drivers and Operation Safety, which is targeted at different age groups. Over the years, you can see the statistics coming down for malicious phone calls and vandalisms and general safety, because it's a multifaceted, especially the Operation Safety. I just wondered, you hinted it, but it's not really prescribed what all the things that you're involved in with partners. We know, some of us will know because we know, but as a sort of monitoring report, it'd be interesting to see just what initiatives you have ongoing, and even anecdotally how successful they are. So that was an observation, Chair. There's one thing I promised to do. I attended Operation Safety last Wednesday, as all the councillors were invited, but I went along. I've had a long association with Operation Safety. It didn't start in Dumfries, it started in Annandale and Eskdale, but I didn't want to score a cheap point that day. But anyway, one of the things I promised was that DuPont can no longer host it. And I was going to, through you, Chair, ask the council, through Derek, there is a plan to put a multi-scenario type building beside Cargan Tower, where the fire service have their depot, and they're going to do some, street scenes and different scenarios built in. But we'd have training rooms which could be available for everybody. And I said I would raise this today, Chair, wondering what input the council could have to that, either just helping build the scenarios, or the building, they do it up inside, as it were, or financially, or whatever, because we are part of this multi-organisation. So a couple of things there. I just thought I promised to say that, and I've said it now, so thanks, Chair.
I come in on then, I'll speak back again.
Chair, it's something that we've been working on. We've been using it, feasibility to see if it's something that was doable before we actually bring papers formally to council. We held a day, probably about a year ago now, just to explore. We invited all the multi-partners, a lot of elected members and councillors over to as well, just to present the theme. Basically, we have a large ex-stores building that's no longer of use as a store, no longer required. Now, there is examples of a multi-agency community safety education building and facility elsewhere, and we've got them developing in another area that I'm involved in. It allows the sort of concept of this, would it be operation safety, something that could be lifted directly there, and having been established, the props would become more intuitive, more interesting. They'd be give you time to create a scene, a chaotic lifestyle, hazards in the home. But it's not just for kids; it would be for all community groups. Now we're proposing that it's a blank canvas right now. There is some remedial work would be required in terms of the toilet facilities to make them DDA compliant for the full community to access the whole premises. But it would be for community safety, education, for cooking safety, road safety, home safety, electrical safety, gas safety, drug safety, the full remit. And we were presenting this to partners to now scope out what do we want it to be collectively as a community safety project, not a fire service. It's a fire service building at the moment, but build it from the ground as a blank canvas for all agencies in the public realm. And then thereafter that, we could scope it out. How can we best fund it? At the moment in time, you could transport a lot of programmes just to it as it is, because it is a space available. But anywhere between that and the absolute gold standard of having full props, street scenes, cars in there. Not only that, it will allow the prevention agenda, which I spoke of earlier, of training each other's staff members to be aware of each of the agency's priorities and do other work for other agencies. That is a place where that could be taken. It could be a home for other third sector to take up a residence in there and run their programmes from it. Because we're all in an environment at the moment where all the public services are being squeezed in terms of the finance budget. We're also being directed in terms of Christie to move towards a more preventative agenda. I'd like to see the fire service probably one of the experts in town on prevention. We've been doing it for a number of years, and in many ways we're a victim of our own success. But we want to lead other partners to show that the investment in prevention, for example, stopping someone going into an elderly person falling in their home, going into the ambulance service, having a major cost in there, going through emergency care, going into critical care, being in an extended period of time in hospital, and then discharged when they're still vulnerable into their own home again, and then subsequently probably down about 9 months later seems to be the trajectory. If we can stop that fall in the first place, it saves all that cost going through the whole public sector. So if we can do it collectively, in one space, so it's not being disparate and we're not doing duplication. That's the sort of concept of the project.
Thanks, Alan, and I'm sure that we've got 100% council support that. I know you've worked very hard on that, trying to get that facility together, and I've been out to see that. So I think it's really very important that we keep these initiatives up and we do work with all partners. Sometimes it's difficult getting partners together, so we need to look at ways of getting partners involved as well, I think. I've just got a wee thing. This is another sort of seasonal thing. We're coming up to that time of year, and I've noticed over the last few years, we used to put, well, we should still do put out reports on recognised bonfire sites. Are these reviewed regularly? Because I've noticed a site locally that there's never been a bonfire on it, and the kids have bonfires all over the village. And I also recognise one where there's a house on it now, so it wouldn't be wise to have a bonfire there. It was just to see how often the sites are reviewed, because areas of land change, and sometimes they aren't used and the kids use elsewhere. But are the recognised bonfire sites still reviewed? Because I believe these were put in the press as well at one time. So I'm just wondering what the work is with that now, because it's always a sort of desperate time for the service.
We're just about to move into that seasonal campaign, and what happens at that point is there is recognised, and we would recommend people go to organised, properly organised, risk assessed, staffed, monitored and held organised events, because it takes all the risk and people having their own. So that goes through a planning process. When the planning process, you come in, our fire safety colleagues look through them, make sure they're adequate, maybe quality assure the risk assessment, and if there's any guidance or assistance that we can professionally give, that's what we give. And then if there's a marketing thing, we would again maybe give publicity to that. Over and above that, we know there will be general bonfires being built, and that's when we go into another mode, when we start speaking to council partners in terms of the waste collection, wardens going out, spotting, particularly in the last few days. Kids are getting quite cute now, so they hide all the wood until the last couple of days or the last day, and then build it, because they know if they see it getting built for weeks and weeks, the council services and multi-partners are going to lift it and identify and take it away from them. So we've got to be cute to them as well. And then at the very last point of that is when we go into the actual operations and the arrangements for on the night, whether it's police patrols, water patrols, our guys being doubled up, and we ramp up our resilience for that time of year.
And I do realise there's a joint approach required in this as well. But it was just to ask, is the public still informed of where the recognised sites are?
It's not something that we do.
So I'll ask Derek, do we still inform?
Thinking time, Chairman.
It's just I never noticed in the press last year, that's what drew my attention.
Yeah, we'll certainly clarify the position, and obviously where it's sensible to do so, we'll do so in conjunction with fire and rescue, but certainly take on board your point, we'll clarify that for you.
Right, thanks very much. Craig, come back.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question really on the service itself, and it's not included in the report, and I understand why, but Alan, it's just a question to see, are you running with a full complement of officers and staff at the moment? And that includes retained, because I know in previous committees you've mentioned that you've had problems recruiting, especially retained firemen in certain areas and for certain stations. So it was just a question to see where you are with staff levels within the service, and whether you're up to a full complement or whether we're still struggling in certain parts.
Well, as previously, there is difficult, and it's always historic, and it's been going for a number of years now, probably decades, of the recruitment and retention of RDS. There is major projects going on at the most strategic level to look about is the model of RDS firefighter, which was defined in 1947. Is that still fit for purpose? I think collectively across the UK the answer is no, but it's got to be replaced that with. For our own area, we're always, the numbers of our staff and the establishment figure for our retained stations hasn't changed one bit. The difficulty we have is we're now a national organisation, and the recruitment and retention, or particularly the recruitment of staff and identifying people who would like to come in the first place, is historically difficult. Sometimes it's impossible in some areas because there's just not the individuals willing or available to carry out that function for us. So it's historically difficult in certain stations in certain areas. That has been exacerbated by the organisation undertaking a large whole-time recruitment campaign. We've got other things at that particular department, promotions and identifying succession planning for other people. So there's lots of things that particular department is working on as we speak right now. However, the recruitment and retention for RDS staff is still a priority. I have raised my concerns because we are running quite a bit. Numbers are under in some of our RDS stations. That is not thingy to specific to the Dumfries and Galloway area. That has been replicated across the rest of the West. So some of my colleagues are collectively making representation in the most straightforward way to our organisation that we need to start putting more considered, more frequent basis in for our RDS problematic. Just for members' awareness, a couple of years back, they centralised the process. So it would be easier to centralise the process as a national organisation, taken on by one department. A few of us with more professional and a bit of experience thought that that could be problematic, and that's what's been borne out. The capacity to do that on a national Scotland pan-Scotland scale has been problematic. There's a realisation now in those departments that that is the case, and they're looking for what could the model be. A report is going into that department literally as we speak, with recommendations of how we do it locally again, and hopefully that will leverage and act as a prompt for the organisation to free up local recruitment campaigns where go out and identify, carry out the programmes themselves, albeit ensuring the standard, the quality of the entrance coming through, the standardised and quality.
Thank you, Chair. And just on the full-time complement, based obviously in Dumfries and your backroom staff, where are we with that?
You'll be aware that the backroom staff, since Fire Scotland established, was one of the areas where the organisation was going to have to make the savings. So 8 functions coming together, 8 headquarters functions, 8 HR departments, 8 finance departments. All that work has been undertaken, and we're just finalising, really just finalising now, the amount of support staff who have either voluntarily left the organisation, took voluntary severance, took early retirement, changed posts, or retrained into another grade. That has been a massive reduction in support staff over the last 3 years, but we're at manageable levels now. We are seeing the department starting to function now. You're actually seeing, in fact, more people starting to be employed now. So adverts are going out for more specialist posts to where there is deficiencies or where key staff members have left and many elsewhere or retired and to be replicated. So that number stabilised to where we thought we would be in the support staff. The whole time complement at this present time has not changed. There is probably going to be changes in the future because the service is looking at standardising, screwing levels across the whole of Scotland. Currently, we're still working at that level with 4 watches. The old Strathclyde 5 GDS systems, they're a totally different operational crewing model, and that is now going to have to be standardised as a work in progress. You'll probably see that early to mid next year. So that will be a change. But it's still being discussed at the moment in time, along with written bodies, so there's a moratorium on really any of the detail of it, and nothing's agreed until it's agreed, so I couldn't give any detail on it, but suffice to say that there's going to be a standardisation of our operational crewing model across Scotland.
Okay. Ian?
Aye, no, that's all right. I knew that's right, just for today and today only, I think, Chairman. I just thought I wasn't going to ask many questions, but I thought this one, I don't think it's been touched on so much, but maybe just on the edges. In Appendix 3 on page 8, I think it talks about a national statistic there, the whole of Scotland, and its fatalities between 2013 and 16. And as you go forward on the top of page 9, that paragraph explains that we're above average nationally when it comes to fatalities. In regards to that, it says there's a lack of information, further information being required, but it does touch on the following page, on page 10. The top first paragraph again says, however, and very unusually, 20 of the 25 non-preventable deaths occurred as a result of the deliberate use of fire with the intention of self-harm or even suicide. So you spoke about multidisciplinary teams meeting together, try to do this preventative work. I just wondered if there was anything, Dumfries and Galloway looks consistent, you could say, when it comes to this particular statistic, and where level went from 0 and 3 and 3. National level, we're above the rest of the Great Britain, you could say, because it doesn't mention Northern Ireland. So if you get any further information, you could maybe add to that and what we're doing towards preventing it out with what we're already doing.
Short answer, we're not doing anything more than what we're already doing. We've identified that the demographics are changing. Our elderly population is a trend that we're seeing nationally across Scotland. That's one of our major numbers in terms of fire fatalities, unfortunately. As you've already acknowledged, Dumfries and Galloway is not immune from using fire as a means to commit suicide. That's a case as well. But that's sort of moving into mental health issues that they would need a multi-agency response and recognition. And it's a difficult one for us to track, but it's a worrying emerging trend nationally that people are using fire more frequently as a means to commit suicide. And as I said, Dumfries and Galloway is not immune to that. With regard to fire fatalities, it really is the accidental fires in the home is the key to this. Unfortunately, we've seen a rise over the last couple of years from where we were. I think that's just in line with the national recognition that the elderly population is more vulnerable. And until all partner agencies come together to put wraparound services around the most vulnerable and accepting that doing a risk assessment at any point in time doesn't mean to say that it's going to stay stable. It needs to be constantly addressed. No matter what agency is in there, they're recognising changing. Someone is elderly in their own home, maybe being discharged from hospital, and you do a risk assessment at that time, that their condition may worsen, their mobility may worsen, their confidence in their home may worsen. That needs to be recognised and support put in place no matter what agency is most appropriate to attend to that support. Does that answer your question, or could I be more specific?
No, I mean, it does answer it. I suppose it's more the national trend rather than the local trend that's at odds here. It just is what it's. I suppose, I mean, ultimately, I could have asked, why are we above the national trend? Why are we, looks like being the worst by a considerable amount when it's per people per million? But, I mean, from the information within the report, we haven't actually got that information, but you've actually touched on a couple of things. I think maybe different organisations, partnership working could actually be better, and they're working towards that. I think you touched on it earlier, and I certainly know the Housing Committee meets this afternoon, we talk about it regularly, and all through housing that meets the actual needs of the person themselves. But it's how do, automatically when I see that, I think to properly scrutinise this report, if we're above the trend, we want to get ourselves back to and get to a level that's comparable with other countries that we're looking at in this case. So how do we do that? We should be working towards it. What are we actually doing? I mean, certainly you've outlined things that we are doing, but within the report it states quite clearly we don't actually know what's actually causing this trend exactly. Probably a multiple amount of things. So it probably answered it more than enough. And it's like I'm only here for the once. So I'll leave it at that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks. Your comments are noted. Any further questions, members? We've got the recommendations. To scrutinise performance report from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway, from 1st April 2016 to 30th June 2016, as detailed in the Appendix 1 and 2. Appendix 1 agreed. 2. Note the content of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service reports on fire fatalities and casualties analysis reports for Scotland and Dumfries and Galloway, as detailed in Appendix 2 and 3. Agreed. I'd like to thank all for your comprehensive report and for the questions. I believe you've got a wee comment.
Chair, could I just, on behalf of Fire Service, just to let you members aware, there's going to be a change of local senior officer. My colleague, Hamish McGee, will be taking over as local senior officer for the area from today onwards. So I would just like to thank you all for your assistance and support during my time down here in Dumfries.
Thanks, Alan. On behalf of the committee and myself, I'd like to thank you for your assistance and support since I've been chair of this committee, and all the best in whatever you're doing in the future. But also a welcome back to Hamish, a real Kent face, I think, to all the members here, and we look forward to working with you again. Thank you. Thank you. Members, before we get into item 3, Divisional Commander has put forward a paper, and with your permission, I'm going to distribute the paper to you because it'd be beneficial for the next report. So I also suggest, I was going to suggest 5 minutes recess to read it, but I think we go for 10 minutes because although it's not a big paper, there's quite a lot of information in there on the various places. So are we okay with 10 minutes? Thank you. Right, thank you. Has everybody had time to read the paper? We'll carry on with item 3, Police Scotland Consultation, Dumfries and Galloway Report by Director Communities. Members will be aware that we have recently received notification from Police Scotland of potential police station closures and that a process of consultation will be undertaken. I understand this is an important item of business given our Council's commitment to protecting our most vulnerable people and keeping communities safe. Members will note that Section 3.14 of the report provides details on some considerations that they may wish to clarify in relation to the proposed consultation and arrangements. Divisional Commander Gary Ritchie is with us today and would be happy to take any questions from members. Before we open up the debate, I would ask Andy Reid to present the report.
Thanks, Chair. I'll keep it very brief. The paper just provides an overview of the consultation, which is now commencing, and I know that Gary has been around meeting with groups previously. It really is for members the opportunity today to sort of find out a bit more about that consultation process, ensure that you are happy with how it's going to proceed, to make sure that we can get our opinions from Dumfries and Galloway as a region, but also if and what involvement Dumfries and Galloway Council has as a response or officer input. I'll hand over to Gary if he's got anything to add.
Thanks, Andy. I guess just to stress that we are, or we have started the consultation process. I would hope that most of you have been at least contacted either by the area commander or the local inspector who are leading on the consultation. And that's very much just to start to first of all engage the local elected representatives, but also to take your advice and what the best way is to progress that consultation through the local communities. This is very much a consultation on future use and future service provision. I understand that we always focus on the word closure, because that's immediately what everybody thinks as soon as we start talking about police offices and stations in the area. But it's actually about what would be the best way to provide the service that the community wants. The reason we've identified these 8 offices is because I'm not convinced that maintaining these offices is the best way to offer the type of services that the communities are looking for. And that's what we want to speak about as part of the consultation. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Gary. Ian, would you like to?
Right, thank you, Chairman. I've absolutely no difficulty at all with the consultation, but I think it's unfortunate with the consultation that the first that members heard and the first that community council heard was the press publication saying 9 police offices were up for closure. I think that put us off on a bad footing. On covering a ward where I have one of the offices concerned, I, more than probably most in the council, would be in a position to try and allay some fears, but I was on the back foot as far as that's concerned. The issue's been raised by a lot of community councils, and I've got an email here, and it raises a number of issues that, to be fair, to make it easier for Gary, I gave him a copy of this rather than have him scribbling everything down. There's 6 issues that are raised by the Convention of Security Community Councils, and they've asked me to raise it here today with your blessing.
Yes, I believe that's what we're here for, Ian, so carry on.
The first one is that if Police Scotland are committed to community policing, why were the views of community councils not sought prior to the announcement of these station closures? And that's really what I felt myself. At the outset of Police Scotland, we went to a consultation process where more than 80% said they did not want a Scottish Police Service, and yet we ended up with a Scottish Police Service. And I think a lot of the public out there think this is a fait accompli, that this consultation is only in name only. And I appreciate your views on that. The second one, what guarantees will there be that no further police stations in Dumfries and Galloway will be closed? The third one, as the vast majority of the police budget is spent in police wages, what guarantees will be given that Dumfries and Galloway will not experience reduction on current staffing levels? The fourth one, what structures are proposed to ensure accountability at the community level? As far as that's concerned, again, one of the big selling points, or tried to be a selling point for a single police force, was that councils would have more local accountability. And I think this particular issue shows that really we do not have that level of accountability. The fifth one, what guarantees can be given that any funds raised by the sale of properties, now this is not a personal one, this is from the Convention of Community Councils, for the sale of properties in Dumfries and Galloway will be reserved for Dumfries and Galloway. And finally, what guarantees can be given that Dumfries and Galloway will remain an independent division within Police Scotland? Thank you.
Just before Gary answers that, I think the questions that are put there is quite a lot as his members is getting, so it's quite useful to come through with them first. Gary.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll deal with each of them in turn. First of all, regarding the press publication, yes, I regret how that was actually came out. That was not my intention and not how we planned to announce this. Our initial strategy in this was to write to senior elected representatives and senior partners and inform them that we were going to start the consultation. Unfortunately, we were caught in the hop as well, I have to say. And I don't know how that happened, but it was unfortunate, and it's unfortunate for us as it was for ourselves, and it's left us playing a bit of catch up. I think it's fair to say. It was your point there. Why are we not being consulted on closures? Well, I'll just reiterate what I said right at the start. We are. That is what we're doing. That is what we're announcing as consultation on future service provision in these local areas. Improvements to the service that we currently provide. We absolutely need the views of communities on that, and we absolutely need the facility to share the information, and some of the information that's been circulated to you this morning. We need to share that with communities in order to get their informed views and the type of service that they can expect and enjoy from the local police service. As I said right at the start, I am not convinced that there is benefit in having an office sitting empty in a community. I don't think that provides any service to the community. I think it provides a degree of reassurance, and that's something that we need to address through any changes that we're going to make. But we need to have a proper sharing information from ourselves as an organisation and also from the communities themselves, and that's what this exercise is all about. As far as there being further stations closed that are unplanned, the 8 offices that are under consideration were identified by the division locally. Those were the 8 that we considered didn't provide best value to the communities. The other offices in the division, I think, are crucial to how we deliver policing services in the division. We're a huge geographic area here. We need police bases at tactical points across the region, and the offices that remain provide that. We are in discussions with council partners and enabled by Scottish Futures Trust as well over the use of some of our offices, because, for example, we've got 2 big offices in Dumfries close by each other. There's no suggestion that either of those are going to close, but there are loads of empty rooms in them, and we are offering the use of that facility to partners, and I know, having spoken to council representatives, that they are looking at that, but there are no proposals on the table to close any further offices, or even to consult on the use of any other offices in the region. As far as police resources, the reduction of police resources, again, the Scottish Government remains committed to the number of police officers nationally. That means that we retain our police establishment as it is present. No suggestions that that's going to reduce. The only caveat I would put on that is that I'm sure you'll have seen the Chief Constable speaking about looking forward as a service. Our view is very much on where we want to be as a service 10 years from now, and recognising that in actual fact, to get there, we don't wait until 9 years from now and start making changes. We identify where we want to be and start making those changes now. So we're in the process of doing that as an organisation, but it's at the very early stages. That's not to say that we're going to reduce our establishment, but I think what it will identify is that we need to use our officers in a different way, identifying the types of crime that we're going to be faced with in So I guess just to draw a line under that, again, it's to say that there is no plan to reduce any of the resources in the area non-nationally. Accountability is an interesting one, and it's something that I actually agree with, and having come to the division and looked at how we set up our supervisory structures across the division, I felt that that level of accountability was a bit fragmented and diluted. I felt we had too many supervisors, and we had too many individuals duplicating efforts of others, which made it a bit, it made the authority and the accountability, as I say, a bit diluted. Sought to change that as part of enhancing the community policing across the division. And in actual fact, I think what we'll see as a result of that is hopefully us going to a situation that you described, Councillor, where you will have direct access to an individual who can make decisions in the area that they have leadership over. As far as the funds raised by the sale of properties, I don't think I need to reiterate the fact that the current financial situation means that we need to be as efficient as we possibly can. It would be my hope as divisional commander that where we make savings in one area, that saves us from making savings in another. But this isn't going to be a big cash cow where suddenly there's a big pile of cash appears on my desk and suddenly I can start spending willy-nilly. And that's not going to be the case. The properties don't belong to us; they belong to the Scottish Police Authority. But as an organisation, we're obviously committed to making significant financial savings over the next 10 years, and this will contribute to that. And as far as remaining an independent division, then clearly I've got a vested interest in that remaining the case. It's something I would support, and again, I would say there are no plans at all on the table for the situation to be anything other than what it is at the moment.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I don't want to hog the table. Thank you for the full response. The only thing I'd like to come back on, you mentioned yourself that you didn't think there were any need, any good came off police officers lying open. I would like to counter that. You did mention it yourself, other than give some sort of assurance, and it does, even if it's a man or woman, police officer, or a police vehicle parked outside because it's not being used, that did give some sort of assurance. I know one of the areas that they were looking at was footfall in police stations. My own one at Dalbeattie, that would be difficult to assess as it was closed to the public about 2 years ago. So there will be no footfall there. What I would like to suggest is that you make some sort of look at working with a partner. We've got a community fire station within 100 yards of Dalbeattie Fire Station, Dalbeattie Police Station, I should say. Getting a police presence there would maintain the public's perception of a police presence in Dalbeattie, and with little or no cost. And I think maybe that could be duplicated or looked at right throughout the division. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for that. In actual fact, as part of the consultation exercise, I have tasked those that are leading it on my behalf for every single office that a station that is under consideration in each of these areas to consult on what a viable alternative would be to provide that police presence there. So that's exactly what we're looking at, particularly in where we can share services. So the fire station in Dalbeattie is a good example. The Johnston Library in Kirkcudbright is a good example that we're looking at. There are other places, Gretna, obviously development in Gretna, the centre in Gretna that's there is another place that we're looking at. We're already in the town hall in Langham. So we are looking at alternatives to provide that reassurance. That would be an improvement on maintaining, and you can see the costs there, maintaining, they're not insignificant, of basically keeping a building that's never used. I would far rather have a facility that we use on a regular basis, that the public know when they're they're going to get us there. It's more visible and more accessible to them. And in actual fact, to me, that would provide a better community benefit than a building that's empty for 90% of the time.
Thanks for that, Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I should consider myself fortunate in that this ward is facing no police station closure, so maybe that means I can take a more objective view. I have read the paper, as everybody else will have, and I note the comments repeated on the information sheets that the public rarely attend. However, I think I look forward to seeing the archive figures, because I think that would give some comfort to people who are concerned, as detailed in paragraph 5th paragraph, saying that any information in that respect which pertains to the stations under review will be presented during the consultations over the next few weeks. I think that would assist in the decision process if these figures came forward to support what has been said on the information sheet. It's anecdotal, as you said. Just one point regarding the efficiency. So that's to give reassurance and improve public confidence, which is tremendously important. However, I would make this one observation regarding the efficiency of the service. Officers are only human beings, in spite of what some members of the public think, and they have needs like everybody else. So what role do these stations listed take in terms of the need for officers to have a break and basic things like eating and toileting? I mean, how does that fit into the pattern if these stations are no longer available? How can the officers manage if they can't get to a place where they can take a break? I would appreciate a comment on that. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Quite a resourceful bunch, police officers, and they'll tend to find somewhere appropriate, I should say, if they need to take a refreshment. What I'm actually trying to encourage is that they use the facilities that are in the community. I don't mind co-ops taking a coffee break. I'd rather they did it in a coffee shop in a local community than sitting in an office that nobody will come into. I'd regularly take a walk down to Starbucks, and I've never stood in there and not had somebody come and speak to me about a local issue. So when they stop for a refreshment, that's something that we're really looking to encourage. Use the facilities that are in the community. Find the places that you can go. Again, if we can establish a base somewhere, then that'll give the officers again a place to go, perhaps to do some of their administrative duties, which wouldn't be appropriate to use or to undertake in somewhere more public. But that's something that I'm really keen to encourage, that we use the facilities that are in the community and keep ourselves visible in the community whenever we need to.
Carry on.
Yeah, I understand that, and maybe as a councillor, I don't have the advantages of a uniform, because when we hold our surgeries, very few people come, and maybe if we were in Starbucks, more folk come and talk to us. But however, I take it that there's no adverse comments of officers or having a break in Starbucks, that it's all right for them sitting here having a coffee. I take it in general, people appreciate the possibility of talking to an officer rather than saying, what's he doing there? Not being out catching criminals. I mean, I don't know.
It's a bit of balance. I wouldn't like them to be sitting in there for hours on end drinking a coffee, but if they can pop in for 5 or 10 minutes and get a takeaway, that's all that it takes. I think police should be where the public are, and that's where the public are these days, especially in busy days in the towns and the villages. So yeah, yeah, I would hope they wouldn't take advantage of that, and in actual fact see it as being a benefit to them and a benefit to the community.
I think it's good to see the officers out in the community, but it's not actually a very confidential setting to mention anything to them, but that's for later. Jack?
Thank you, Chair. We have actually replied to Gordon and asked them if we could arrange through Nitsdale area to have a community meeting to discuss this, so as the public can then tell what they, or speak their minds on these things, because they never had the chance when we shut the control room. I think this would be absolutely first class if we could arrange that. So hopefully Gordon will do that. And I see on the, it was mentioned in here when Police Scotland took over from us as a unitary authority about the eventual closing of either one of the two stations in Dumfries, which I believe at that time they were owned by the council. And we handed them over. So we're going to have to, if we want one back, we're going to have to pay for it again. I find that dreadful. But no doubt that the time will come when we will hear that one of these two stations will close in Dumfries. I would bet it'd be Cornwall Mount, because there's no cells in that, I believe.
All I can say is there's no plans for it. As far as the Terms of Christie are concerned, Community Empowerment Act is concerned, we are being pushed to share facilities with our partners, and so we have to look critically at the facilities we've got and where, in actual fact, we could provide that. Now at Cornwall Mount, we've got plans in place there for the multi-agency services hub, the Public Protection Multi-Agency Services hub, which is going to be located in where the control room was. That's a good example of that type of provision, and we're hoping that we can use some of the empty capacity we have at Lorburn Street as well for some council services or other partner services if need be. I think it's a positive to do that, and I understand exactly what you're saying about the regulatory provisions around about that, but it's just better than having empty rooms. And what it does actually is preserve the importance of these buildings and these facilities to the community.
I'll come back later, John.
Okay, Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Without going over a lot of the things that Ian has brought up, and I completely agree with the questions that were put forward by Ian, unfortunately in this particular instance I'm going to be getting parochial because I have two stations within my ward that are allocated for potential closure here. I'm afraid I think that the consultation that we are talking about here is just a tick box exercise put forward by Police Scotland, and that it is already a fait accompli. I've had information sent to me that tells me that 5 officers have already been moved from the Annan station to Dumfries and are not to be replaced. Officers in the Gretna station have already been told to start from the Annan station and to start and finish the shifts at Annan, and that the TV licence in Gretna has not been paid and the TV has been removed. So it sounds to me as if a decision has already been made in that particular case. In questioning from Colin Smith, an MSP, the Secretary for Justice, Mr Matheson, states that it is up to the local commander to decide once consultation is complete. Now, I wonder if he would accept it if the local commander deemed that he would keep all the stations under review open, and would that be an option for our local commander to take forward? I cannot see how any of this is good for community policing and only for Police Scotland's budget. To me, it's not a case of having an empty office, as the local commander has stated today, but it's having police on the beat. If we lose a base, I fear that we will lose the officers locally as well. This consultation, as it's put forward, or this idea of closing these local stations, I mean, that is only going to be driving a wedge between Police Scotland and the communities. Since its conception, Police Scotland have constantly assured us, as this committee, that local policing is still at the forefront of its activities. says, since the start, the community police attendance at all of my community councils within my ward has dropped dramatically. And I've raised this time and time again at this committee. And it's very, very few attendances now at community council meetings and community meetings on the whole. And I just cannot see how they can say that Police Scotland is still taking concise of the community and their feelings. Going back onto a point there that in the information that we got, and again it's regarding the Gretna, and I apologise to other members, but raising a point that Ian has raised as well, the public attending the offices are very rare. Well, when it is not a fully manned station, the public don't know when that office is open. So I think putting that statement there it's a way of defining their own reasons for closing the office, but the public will never know when police offices like that are attended. And so you wouldn't expect the public to attend or to go up to these offices. I mean, Gretna itself has over 3 million visitors a year between the gateway and the blacksmith shop. And it's a key location for access to the M74 and collaborative working with Cumbria as well in that case. And not to have a police present there, I think is absolutely ridiculous, because we are talking about Moffat Station as well at the top end of the M74 in our region. Again, I think the local commander in a way has contradicted himself in a comment he made earlier about the Langham Station, when he says, after a comment Ian was talking about reassurance, and he said, well, we already have the town we already use as Police Scotland, the town hall in Langham there, and that gives that. But in this report, we're talking about taking that away as well. So I'm really not happy about this report coming forward. Yes, we're going into consultation, and I reiterate, I think it's just a fait accompli, and the consultation is just tick box for Police Scotland. Yeah.
If I could just come in here, I think like Ian's points, the points that Craig have just raised are consistent with the points the other members would like to raise, because these are the issues that we've all got.
Thanks, and thanks for your honesty, Councillor. I'll be equally honest back. It's not a fair compliment at all. And when we get to the end of the exercise and I present my recommendations to the Scottish Police Authority, and I've said it before to the groups in private, at that point then you can call me a liar if you like, but it's not a fair compliment. We will be consulting, and we'll be consulting with the communities directly. To answer your point directly about having a public meeting, the whole reason for our local inspectors and area commanders coming and speaking to elected representatives is to take their advice on how best to engage the community. Now, not every elected representative has said that a public meeting is the best way to do that. Some have suggested already that the best way would be through community councils, area committees, and others have suggested public meetings. Where we think we should have a public meeting, we'll have a public meeting. I can assure you in that. To take your point about Gretna, I'm already in record as saying that I want to keep a police base in Gretna for exactly the reasons that you articulate. I don't think that the facility that we have in Gretna just now offers value for money for the community of Gretna, and I think there's far better opportunities for us in that area to maintain a police base. So we will explore, as part of this exercise, the possibility of having a facility at the retail gateway. That might prove too costly for us, but we're going to explore that. We also have the council centre there, which apparently has facilities that we can use as well for a police base. So we will be maintaining some kind of police base in Gretna. I can assure you that for exactly the reasons that you articulate. But as I say, I don't think that office offers the most efficient way to provide that service. As far as the provision of policemen goes, nothing changes. The number of officers that are allocated to Gretna will maintain their deployments as they are just now. As far as the attendance at community council meetings that you mentioned, I agree with you, and that's why we've made some structural changes. And again, you will see improvement in that. And if you don't see an improvement in that, please come to me, because it's an absolute central tenet in my local strategy to improve and enhance the local availability, accessibility, and accountability of our local police officers, and you will see that, and this work is about that as well, because what I want is a station. People don't come to the police offices. I mean, we've heard yourself saying here that you hold surgeries and nobody attends. It's exactly the same with police offices. Nobody comes to them, nobody uses them. I would like to have a facility that the public would use. I would like to have a facility that where we could say, you will have a police officer here on these days, at these times, and actually make a commitment to ensuring that that is the case every time that we promise it. Now, I don't mind that in that situation if nobody then attends. But what I can't do is keep a police station open for 24 hours a day that nobody's going to attend to, and the officers that you have patrolling Gretna are suddenly cut because they have to man an empty office for a vast majority of the day. That doesn't make any sense to me in providing an effective local service. So it's all about being smarter. It's all about providing the type of service that the community want and what the community need. It's about addressing threat and harm, and when we come on to talk about where we are with performance, I'm going to speak a bit more about that. And it is about, and for me, it's about enhancing that local community service that you've just articulated you feel has been eroded over the last few years. It's going to take a bit of time, but I say to everybody around the table, I say to everybody in my consultations with them, please at least engage, please at least give us a chance. It is not a fait accompli, and I will share with you the recommendations that I make to the Scottish Police Authority at the end of the exercise, and I'll be as open as that with you.
Back, Chair, thank you. I just wonder, a couple of comments I picked on there about you considering the use of the Gretna Gateway for an office. I certainly don't consider that is the right way forward, because that is the tourist attraction, shall we say, a shopping attraction.
It's got a Costa coffee shop there.
It has a Costa coffee shop, yeah, I must agree. Yeah. You know, that, and it shuts at 6 p.m. The gates are locked at 6 p.m. all the time, so there'll be no way for police vehicles to park, etc., etc. So I certainly don't agree with that. That is a way forward to consider. But I wonder, would the local commander be prepared to answer my question that I asked, that if he came back after the consultation and said that to the Secretary for Justice that from the consultation he is not closing any of the identified stations here, would that be something that he is prepared to do?
When we engage in our consultations with the public, we will be sharing information as to the use of our current buildings and the alternatives. If it should be the case that there are no alternatives to providing the type of service that we need in a particular area other than to maintain that office or that station there, then that will be my recommendation, that we maintain that station there. I think there must be better alternatives for at least most of the stations that are on that list at the moment.
Thank you. Ian C.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks very much. Like I say, guys, I probably be my only time here, so just pick up on some of the things, some of the language that you used earlier. He spoke about consulting with senior elected representatives. If you took that into consideration with the council, there's 47 councillors, 14 of which are senior, the rest are standard councillors, so you'd miss out a whole load. I know by my experience already, you're consulting with everybody, but just the language that you're using there, you'd almost be excluding some of the senior elected representatives. I do think the M74 corridor, which you've already picked up on, we have to make sure we're taking that seriously. I think Craig's emphasised that. You're looking at maybe potential ways, well, you're looking at potential ways of delivering the same service, if no, I suppose that's something I want to touch on as well. Is it the same service? Is it a better service you're looking at? Is it a more, in regards to that, my quick calculation is £100,500 revenue saving for Dumfries and Galloway. That's what you're looking at according to the papers that we have. It contained within that, in fact, a question you were asked earlier about the staff, retaining staff, the workforce in this area. You answered it saying that nationally, Scottish Government or Police Scotland have stated that they will contain, keep up the numbers at a national level, but we are obviously interested in Dumfries and Galloway. So if there's over £100,000 worth of potential revenue savings, you can still deliver the service. Do we see extra, a couple extra, 3 extra, whatever it may be, feet on the street, so to speak, or what is the benefit we see from that? Or is that £100,000 go as a saving and it's gone and it's lost in the ether? I mean, I think we need to better understand that. Really reassured at the fact that you said this is the starting point, not the end point. And I suppose the first time you got in contact with Elgin was 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Fortunately, we weren't able to meet you before this, but we knew we'd get this chance. So, delighted to see that. See, in regards to the savings that you're looking at here, how does that compare to, so there's a percentage, overall budget for Dumfries and Galloway as a division, there's a percentage, that £100,000 a percentage that you're saving. How does that compare to other divisions across Scotland? Are we at high level, low level? So, I mean, I suppose there's quite a few things I've put there in regards to if you could try and put something together for us, please, Gary.
Yeah, the buildings are owned by the Scottish Police Authority, and I can feel Mr. Graham's eyes burning in my back here as I'm speaking, because if we'd identify any properties that are for sale, there will be a capital receipt for that. Obviously, the revenue savings are for Police Scotland. The capital receipt is obviously the Scottish Police Authority, and that would contribute, I expect, to the overall savings that the Police Scotland need to make over the next 10 years, rather than being earmarked for reinvestment. But that's not to say that where we need to invest money, that the capital receipt that we get from this wouldn't be used. The reason I'm being woolly on it is because it's no my money to spend at the end of the day, and where we make local savings from our budget, then that is my money to spend, and that is reinvested locally. An example of that is, and I've alluded to it here today, the savings that we require to make in our budget. I can achieve that without reducing any staff, because what we can do is we can have, as I've said before, we had far too many, I think, sergeants and inspectors in the area. So if I can reduce the rank profile, in actual fact, for every supervisory post that we perhaps rationalise, we get a constable back for that I can put immediately onto the street, which is why I can say we can enhance community policing in that way and remain efficient. As far as how we compare, every division is looking at their estate at the moment. Every division requires to look at their estate. So we're not alone in that. I think we probably have, just purely because of the geography of the division, we probably have a greater number of stations, however you want to talk about it, per population, per head of population, per square mile, just because of how the division's traditionally been laid out. So we'll probably get a greater number of these types of offices that are underused than some of the more urban divisions have. And just to kind of give you an example, my previous role before I came here was working in Edinburgh city centre, and when we're looking at the estate's profile there was probably 2 or 3 offices fit into that category, offices that were underused. But that's because most of the offices are in big urban centres, and there's less of them to begin with anyway. So it's difficult to make that type of comparison. And I think the other point you made there was about the budget overall, about what control I have on that. I have control of the non-staff budget for Dumfries and Galloway. That doesn't paint anything like the whole picture of the service that we get here, because we get a huge amount of support for national resources and national policing. We have an overtime budget as well that I have to manage, but it's actually fact with staff costs. So it's a bit complex. You know, I do need to make savings off a local budget, but where we make the savings, in actual fact, we can reinvest some of that in other areas. I have that flexibility, if that was your question.
I think you've answered that well, Gary, in regards to the questions and points that I've posed. But I think ultimately, and I think maybe Craig picked up on this as well, I think if you've got to be as open as what you're saying, you've got to be open. So you're going through the start a consultation process, take on board what the views of the communities, and if the council get a chance to look at potentially your draft report and your recommendations before they go back, so we get a last chance to influence, so to speak. And I don't think we could ask for any more than that. I think you've been very open at that point. And Chairman, I think it would be a chance for us, if we're not happy, we'll get a final chance to say, right, listen, we're not happy, this is why we're not happy, this is what we think you should change and make different, and at least I think we've been as open and transparent as we possibly could. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks. Agree with that. Run it.
Thanks. This consultation has thrown up more than just shutting a few police stations, and I've got to say up front, this doesn't directly affect my ward, but however, the inspectors and the sergeants and some of the thinking behind getting people out onto the street does affect everywhere. And first of all, we got the email from Stephen Stiff on the 13th of September. We're now considering it on the 11th, and I just wonder when the consultation process actually starts, because in the papers here it says we're going to get one-to-one from the local inspector. That's not happened yet, as far as I'm aware. When I got the email from Stephen, I quickly replied to it, and I copied everybody into this. And it was about the funding. And I asked, and so I'll come to the thank yous in a minute, but I asked because to do the proper analysis of a consultation and closures on the background of savings, and let's be upfront, this is not the police's fault. This is lack of government money. And I'll come back to that. There's a £1 billion black hole, and 100,000 is hardly going to fill it. But we've got to look at the backdrop of all this and why it's being forced upon us. I asked Stephen if he could provide some financial information to help inform our deliberations. And to be fair, we've got some. But what we don't know is what I think Ian meant the point was, what's the percentage of the share that Dumfries and Galloway gets? I mean, those of us that's been on this committee for a wee while, we remember that when it was Dumfries and Galloway, we helped with the GAE, granted expenditure, we always put a wee contribution in there. So we always knew the finances. We don't know, and that's the nature of the beast, I suppose. Since we got the email from Stephen, and you came around the groups, and we much appreciated that, Mr. Matheson has now set the scene for Police Scotland. So in the intervening time, he's come out with a statement that it's community policing, this, and this, and he prescribed it. Today, we hear, and we've got representatives from the SPA, that the properties are owned by the SPA. So the savings, the revenue cost is a saving, but the capital cost would go to the SPA. So you've got Mr. Matheson, you've got the SPA and everything. So the question that keeps whizzing in my head is, who runs the police? Is it the police that run the police, or is it the SPA, or is it the government? I know, and we're teasing out issues here, and I know there's impacts on some communities. What is never taken account of is the reality of this place. We have sparse populations, and we don't have high crime like Glasgow and Edinburgh, but it's crime that affects local communities. And so there has to be a different model of policing, and that has to be reflected in the funding and the way we deliver that policing. And to me, it's this one-size-fits-all. And at Disney, we seem to suffer because of this generic policing approach. Because I've seen no evidence of, let's look at Dumfries and Galloway, the Highlands or the borders, because they're rural, and we've got to maybe police them differently. I know that's a bit of a rant, but to me, there's lots of issues that this consultation is throwing up that we need to address. And okay, we're dealing with the police station closures and the rationale behind that, but equally the delivery of the new model of lack of inspectors. That's my last point, thanks. I'm soon finished. One of the things that I've sat here since '97, when I used to be the police, fire and public protection and so forth, and one of the things that you hear from the local cops is the opportunity to go up through the ranks. And if you cut out sergeants and inspectors, not everybody will become chief inspector or one, because it might take longer. So the terminology, if I'm going to succession planning, and people's ambition may get curtailed. Maybe that's for another day. But, this is all the sort of issues that, when I read this, it threw up all these things. It's not just shutting stations. There's a whole backdrop to this, Chair. Thanks for listening to me.
I think in the first few years of Police Scotland, when we were coming together as a single organisation, and we had to align strategies, make sure that services were provided equally across the country. I think the criticism of it being a one-size-fits-all approach was in many instances quite valid. And I think that was recognised by the force, because what we've moved to now is a situation where really at the heart of how we deliver policing service nationally is a local approach. I know that sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but I have far more autonomy as divisional commander than any of my three predecessors had. The changes that I've made locally since arriving here to the structures have only been made here, and they've been made absolutely in reflection of the type of policing that I think this area needs. Far more community enhancement, far more community visibility, far more engagement with local community councillors and local elected representatives. That doesn't happen in every division. But I think it's something that's really important for here. Now, again, I have the autonomy to make those changes and make those decisions. Probably something that in the early days of Police Scotland, my predecessors didn't enjoy. So I benefit from that as a local divisional commander, and I hope over the next few months and years you'll see more evidence of that. I can only speak from my own experience here. The level of interference, supervision, direction from the centre is far less than it used to be. The level of accountability on me as local commander is far more. That's the situation that I think you want to see from your local division, and to me everything's moving in the right direction as far as that goes. The reduction in sergeants and inspectors does hit people's career opportunities locally. There's no doubt about that. I've been absolutely open and honest about that. If there's less sergeants and inspectors, then there's less opportunities. Of course there are. There are more opportunities nationally. I don't like to see good people leaving the division, but it's the opportunities are still there for individuals if they want to specialise or if they want to go through the ranks. But unfortunately, to do that and stay in one area now is going to be a bit tougher than it was before.
Thanks. You missed the question about when does the consultation actually start?
Yeah, as I say, and apologies for that, the fact that we were caught a bit in the back foot. The consultation started with the circulation of that initial letter. I'm surprised that you've not been contacted for your one-to-one. I'm sure some people around the table should have been. If they haven't been, you will be. I can guarantee that. No, you will be, but I'm hoping to have the consultation. I'm not really wanting to put too much of a timescale on it, but the other side of it is I don't want to let it drag on. So I'm hoping to have the consultation completed by the end of the year, and hopefully have my recommendations set by the beginning of the new year. As I say, I had directed the local area. I know Stephen Stiff contacted you, Councillor. The local inspectors will be contacting you for a one-to-one in the next few days. I'm sure there must be some around the table that have been contacted already.
Chair, with your indulgence, there was a big piece I forgot, just realised. Police and fire said it earlier, and the police bit. We've got the Building Safer Communities, was it? This initiative, which must affect the police as well, Building a Safer Community. And it was quoted several times, the Christie report. Now, it's 6 or 7 years since Christie finalised his report, and it was stuck on a shelf and never brought out. Conveniently, it's being brought out now because we want to start sharing services. I mean, Christie did a heck of a work, and those of us that were interested at the time wanted it to be adopted. Now, I know Pat Shearer was very keen on that because it talked about early interventions and that, but that's by the by. it just seems a convenient vehicle now to say, oh, we're doing the Christie report when it's been sitting on the shelf for 7 years. Sorry, that's not a criticism of you, it was just general.
I was just asking, would your recommendations be coming here first before they're finalised?
Yes, I'll share my recommendations with this committee. I spoke to Andy beforehand about how we actually progress that, and whether it's a special meeting of this committee or through correspondence, whatever you would prefer.
Special meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just very briefly, since I kicked this off, it's just my apologies. I'm going to have to go. I've got deputy head teacher interviews in Dobeitia now. And just one final thing, back to Gary's probationer days, I'm quite certain I did not take him for coffee. I don't know where he got that from.
I can confirm that was the case, Chair.
Right, that's fine, Ian. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think I was going to ask just in the back of Councillor Ogilvy's question there about when the consultation actually starts. I think this has been coloured by the way the information came out about the consultation, as you've already touched on, Gary. But to be fair, I think what I've found when I've been at community councils trying to inform people about the letters we received, in terms of the ones that were sent out on the 13th, was this is going to be the start of a consultation. Indeed, we've been quite lucky in Annandale North, where we do get a presence at our community councils from community officers, and they were also there to inform, as they did, you did at the Federation of Community Councils as well in Annandale. So, but the feedback that I was getting from members of the community wasn't nearly as colourful as it obviously has been elsewhere. In fact, there was probably more of a reaction when this council was rationalising its own libraries and customer service centres, which seemed to elicit much more reaction from members of the local community than what this is. This to me is business. And, you know, I would much rather see a sharing of facilities. The Christie's report, it doesn't gather dust on my shelf, because I think it's sort of been the backdrop of finding the best way to spend the public pound once rather than 5 or 6 times. And I think that's almost set the environment for the last sort of 5 years, as far as I can see. But anyway, so I suppose really what I'm asking is, when does the consultation start? You've said it's effectively started at now, but that would be helpful to be clearer, because at the moment it just says, you know, community councils, community groups will be contacted. There's no time frame for that. That's very clear. I think that would be much more helpful. So because of the way it came out in the media, I wasn't really sure, had it started now? When was the next stage? What was the time increments? When would we know? I'm pleased to hear all the different feedbacks you've given today, because it seems just a sort of rational way to approach what's effectively a rationalisation of property. So my curiosity, though, is about Langham, which I thought Councillor Peacock had sort of raised initially, but that seems to be currently an example of where you're sharing a facility, yet it's been put forward as a criteria that meets the rationalisation. I think in the report there was an assumption that it was referring or misreferring to a piece of property that you didn't, in fact, or the SPA didn't own, because that was, I remember at the time, a property for dispute, which the SPA subsequently withdrew the dispute, and that was retained as a council property, which was vacated, I think, in 2010 or something like that. But that was ours, and in fact still is the old police station, because we haven't sold it. But so I'm curious about how the rationale applies to Langham Police Station being the single room within the town hall, which does seem to be a shared facility, which is indeed one of the aims you're trying to reach by seeking how that would work in a rural community by sharing facilities. So I'm not clear on how the criteria applies in that particular case. And just for the chair, I think the questions raised earlier didn't quite reflect where I was about to come from with my questions, which I hope has become clear, because I think we have had to almost catch up in the last few years just with the way the police have gone about informing us about consultations, given in 3.3 in the report, traffic wardens, the counter services, and lower, but you know, the control room. I think the problem, what seems to be happening now is an unfortunate media event has set the backdrop to this, whereas before there were clearly issues about how we were being consulted. Now, I welcome the way you've sort of addressed quite a lot of the issues and the fact it's going to come back to this committee. I'd appreciate a bit more clarity on timescales and processes so that community groups know when they're going to be asked and how they can feed back in. That's quite ambitious if you want it done before the end of the year, but yeah, I think my question is really a wee bit about Langham, and also can we just be, I trust you to do the policing, and I think we should trust ourselves to do the scrutiny, and I think there's an awful lot of stuff around this which is neither, you know, and so I'd rather focus on the business of the report, and just if you could clarify the Langham situation, that'd be helpful.
Just dealing with Langham first, as a good example, shared services, the reason that that's there is because our situation in Langham is we have an agreement with the council that when the front office is staffed with council staff, that individual will take any police business and pass it to us, and that has been the situation for a couple of years, I believe, and we've never had anything. So although that fits into a category of something that we might like to see in other places, I'm just not entirely convinced that that facility works well for that particular community. But again, we'll consult on that. And the point, and that kind of leads me on, I think, to your other point, which is, you know, the structure of this. The way that I'm running this, and I mentioned it earlier about it being a bit open-ended and being a wee bit reluctant to put too much of a time scale on it, because I think we'll need to approach our consultation in different ways in different areas under consideration. So the first point of contact for me was with the local elected representatives to, again, share the information, take initial thoughts from yourselves, but also to get a bit of advice on how you feel would be best placed to consult the particular communities in the areas that you represent. You said, Councillor, again, just reiterating that for you, you think that should be a public meeting, and that's fine. Already in some areas, we've been advised that that's perhaps not the way to go. So I would rather make it bespoke to each of the areas rather than saying, now we're going to consult elected representatives. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to consult the communities, because that might not give us enough time to do the type of communication and consultation that each community requires. So that's the reason why it might seem a bit unstructured. It's not the case. I just want to work through each of the communities in the way that best serves them.
What I was asking for was an area committee community meeting. That was what was asked for.
Come back in, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just a wee bit of clarity in the line. I'm just sort of trying to get a wee bit of a marry up between what was in the report and the additional information you presented today, just about the use of the Langham Police Station. So you've kind of qualified one as being, it doesn't, it fits the criteria in a certain way because you don't think it's the best way to deliver that shared approach in Langham, for example, although it may work elsewhere. But in the report, it's certainly couched in a wee bit of qualifying information in 311 in the report on page 3. So it was really just to understand, was there a sharing of information between SPA or Police Scotland and our officers so that we were both clear what we were talking about when we spoke about Langham Police Station? Because I think there's a wee bit of confusion there.
I think the confusion was initially on my part, which I hope I've cleared up now. I had a bit of misinformation as to what facilities were there, but that might be why that's in there.
Right, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. First question. Kubrick Police Station currently has 1 sergeant and 10 constables. Dalbeattie Police Station currently has 1 sergeant and 10 constables. I don't like coincidences. Are these the same people? Or are there 2 sergeants and 20 constables in those allocated to those 2 stations? That's the first bit of my question. The second bit, and I make no excuse for being parochial, is Whithorn Police Station. I would have to say that we had a the 3 elected members from Mid Galloway had a very long, protracted meeting with Inspector Stuart McComb, who ad nauseum pushed the policy of community policing, which was quite well received, I would have to say, because we do feel that if we can get more police on the street, supposing it's only for 2 or 3 hours today and 2 or 3 hours in 2 or 3 days' time, at least to be seen. Supposing they stop at Starbucks, but there's none of them in Whitehorn, I can assure you. But stop and speak to the locals. That's what people want to see. That's what the people want to see. They want local contact. To close the police station in South Markers is 20 miles to Newton Stewart, and it's probably 35 miles to Stranraer. It's a long way away for people. I appreciate that there is nobody there, so you can't close something that's not even open. That's a very difficult scenario to do. One of the things that the people in South Markers are really worried about is if you close the police station, that they might lose the ambulance service, which is based in the police station. So if you close the police station and sell it to gain a revenue, where would the ambulance service go? You know, there's across the road there is a fire station, not very far away anyway. So these are all scenarios that the local people in the South Market are concerned about. One of the things we put to Stephen, Stuart McComb was criminal justice and community resilience teams also using that building, so you get more community use of it, or more use of the building to justify it being there in the first place. And you might gain a wee bit extra rent. So it might be a positive story. The likes of Dalry, I can see, it's never open, there's never anybody there, so you're paying £4,000 for something that value money. That's another matter. But again, it's strategic because it's halfway between Castle Douglas and Carsfairn. You know, it's another 9 mile, 10 mile onto Carsfairn and another 6 or 7 miles onto the boundary, East Ayrshire. So these are all things that you'll have to take into consideration. I think you're being ambitious with the timescales. I think to have this consultation over by the end of this year, that wasn't what Stuart McComb indicated to us. He indicated to us it was fairly open-ended. And he did push the fact that it's not a fait accompli. The cynical public out there think it is because they've been caught out too often before with things that were sure we weren't a fait accompli, and they turned out to be a fait accompli. So you've got a bit of dike building to do. Stop that thought out there. You've got to show consideration to what the public actually think, because in the past, somebody else said 85% of people didn't want police. Scotland wanted the police, Galloway police, and nobody took any heed. So, you know, going against what the public want. So those are my points that I would like to put. Pleased to hear what you think of them.
Thanks, Councillor. Can I just deal with Whitehorn first of
Yeah.
all, because that is one that's a bit different for us, because in actual fact, the Scottish Police Authority own the premises, and it's rented to the ambulance service. So in actual fact, that's a cost-neutral situation. It's not used often at all by the police officers. So it does seem to be a strange setup. I've spoken to my equivalent in the Scottish Ambulance Service, and they're looking at the possibility of purchasing that from the police authority. It's not part of their medium-term estate plans, I'm being told, but they're looking to see whether there's facilities to do that. If it wasn't acceptable to them to do that, then that would be what I don't think I would be happy at recommending at all, would be the closure of a facility that then removed another service from a community. So I would find it very difficult to recommend that without there being some kind of way to provide that service, which is obviously needed for South Markers. So I'd like to kind of give that reassurance that it's not my intention that any of our actions or recommendations would see the provision, the loss of provision of any service to the community, be it from us or another partner. But we'll see what, as part of my report back to the SPA goes, that will contain hopefully the information that we need with regards to whether or not the ambulance service can purchase Whithorn. The reason I said the end of the year is because I think I mentioned earlier, I don't want to have things just drag on and us get into a cycle of consulting and then reconsulting and then reconsulting again. I would like us to get to a position, and I'm driving towards getting to a position. I don't want to be sitting here this time next year talking about the same things with you. But in the same regard as Stuart rightly said, it is open-ended to the point where we will wait until we're satisfied that we've consulted effectively in each of the communities affected by this before we come to a recommendation. And it's not just consultation, it's also about exploring alternatives for service as well. And I'm not going to put a recommendation up before I have the results of the consultation and the results of the exploration of alternatives, if you like. So, but I want to push that on and try and get through it as quick as possible, which is why I'm saying let's try and aim for the end of the year. If it's too ambitious and we don't get there by that point, then we'll push the consultation back a bit to make sure that we do. And your point about resourcing, it's always that's kind of to give an indication there about the number of officers that are allocated to particular areas, even though they don't necessarily work out the offices there. And the point was that, in actual fact, that's not going to change, regardless of what we do with the offices. So when you talk about 1 in 10 and 1 in 10, in actual fact, that's the numbers that have that area as their default patrol area, if you like. In actual fact, you've got the whole of that section available to police there if it's required in these different locations. So, as I say, that was there just to kind of give an indication and a reassurance that those numbers won't change as a result of this.
Just very quickly, so that means 2 sergeants and 20 constables?
Yeah, in actual fact, if you take that whole section as a whole, then you have more than that. But that's what you have in terms of the specific deployments in that area.
Right, just before we go into recommendations, I'll be parochial as well maybe for a minute, but I think it's really important that we get clarity on the process and the timelines so that we can, especially us that's got one potential closure in the ward, we've got people coming to us all the time, so I think we need to let them know what the clarity and what the process is going to be on the sort of timelines. My local community lost a police station a long time ago when the pits closed, and you really notice that in the community, even though the population's going down. And about 3 years ago, I managed to get community co-op, and about 4 years ago, at the time, the only way people recognised Connell home is the amount of times it was in the crime file in the standard. Since the introduction of community co-ops, antisocial behaviour, nuisance crime has went down 50%. Recently, we've started to lose that because most of the time the community co-ops on operational duties. So I hope your comments, Gary, on the community side of things improving is true, but I have my fears on that. But we put the community co-op into a small office that I had with a village pride group, and him going about in his bike is worth more than 4 officers going about in the car or been stationed in Dumfries. So I think it's vital that we keep the community side. We were all involved in the Pathfinder process, and all the way through that, local was the call. And all we've seen is local been taken away. And things happen very quickly. I asked the question once, and they said, oh, things won't start changing for another year. A couple of months later, the control room was closed. So Plus, I asked a question at COSLA in Edinburgh once about the lack of consultation, and Mr. Emery told me we don't need to consult. So this has all got a bad feeling from us all, especially as it's been involved in it. And we need to get that confidence back, because the people out there don't believe what they're saying. And the words that we're saying are coming from the police. So I think it's really important that we keep the public up to scratch. I've got one in my ward, and they've got a protest group up and running and placards and everything going. So these people are a bit desperate with this, and I think the difficult one with the one in my ward is the actual area that's going to be without face-to-face contact with policemen. So we've got all this, and the members have all the same problems. Before we go into the recommendations, I think there's notions that we maybe put something else in the recommendations from this board, and I'll be advised by the members here if they want to add anything to the recommendations, or will I just go with them and see what the agreement is with the members? I'll just hand over to Derek.
Yeah, thank you for a full debate, members. As I understand it, I think what, in light of your previous experiences, keep me right, would be that Gary will be reporting to the SPA in terms of his proposal. So I think on that basis, what you need to be clear about is the time frame for which Gary's working to for that report being received for SPA, so it can be considered by this committee at appropriate time before then, so you have the chance to scrutinise the proposal. So I think what would be helpful, although there is flexibility in terms of your consultation, there will be key stages in the consultation. So I think the committee are seeking just confirmation when it's begun, when it ends, and within that, the reporting line for SPA, and therefore allowing sufficient time for this committee to scrutinise. So I think that's my reading of the room, members. Secondly, I think you've welcomed the notion that there will be no proposals for closures where there is no suitable alternative community locations for a public access to Police Scotland. And I think you've had that indication today. I think you've welcomed that. And therefore, obviously, the proposals coming back to this committee is certainly something that you've welcomed as well. Hope that's helpful, John.
So we'll go with the recommendations as they are.
I think there was one thing that we all said was that Dumfries and Galloway Council are quite happy to work in partnership to look at shared facilities. I think that was said by members as well. I mean, I don't want to commit the council to something, but I'm sure that's what was said.
Claire, could you just read out something?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got the comments from the director that summed up a lot of what has been said in this committee. Being that you wanting more information on the time frame for which the report should be received by the SPA. This would allow for report to come back to this committee first. We also want more information on the actual consultation processes and key stages within that time frame.
Thanks so much, Chairman. Just in regards to paragraph 3.14, I mean, I think that captured a lot of the questions that were asked, with what Councillor Blake has actually asked. So I wonder, in the report that comes back, it would be good if I feel more confident if all that stuff was covered with the further report, the recommendations, obviously a report. We would normally have a report for the police authority attached to as an appendix, wouldn't it? So I wonder if in particular, them 3.14, them questions in there could be covered as well, just as a request, Chairman, in the future report.
Members happy with that? The notification of an upcoming consultation on police station closures announced by Police Scotland and included in Appendix 1.
Just to be crystal clear, that's talking about an upcoming consultation. Are we started now? Is this us? We're on.
Consultation has started. Perhaps it would be helpful for me just to communicate the correspondence with a consultation plan that's perhaps not time-bound, whereby we're saying that this is the first stage of the consultation, which we're very much in dealing with elected representatives, establishing the way forward for consulting with each of the communities under question. Then the next stage might be community consultation. Then the next stage might be the exploration of alternatives. Final stage, compilation recommendations and bringing them back to the council. I mean, I can put time frames in it if you like, but as I say, my reluctance in that was, I think, in some areas we'll do it very quickly, in other areas it might take a bit longer. And when we get into the consultation, we might find that we want to do a bit more work than in actual fact we had planned to. So I don't want to keep it too time bound, but I can certainly give an indication of that if that's helpful.
So Steve, if we change that to ongoing consultation. Current. Correct. Current. Read. Sorry, Michael. I'll say that again because we'll not be recorded. 2, agree to receive an update on the consultation process from the local divisional commander, Police Scotland, at the subcommittee meeting. And 3, consider the council's engagement on this consultation to provide fair representation for Dumfries and Galloway. Agreed? I've always got a hard time for ex-chairs at these meetings.
You did use the definite article in the first paragraph there, the current. Did I hear you right? The definite article instead of the indefinite article.
I'm very sorry about that. I cracked a tooth on Saturday night. That's how we were bothered with my speak. Right, everybody agreed? Okay. Item 4, Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan, 4-month performance update, 1st April 2016, 31st of July 2016. Report by Director of Communities. This report from Police Scotland provides members with information on the service performance during the period April to July 2016. The information provided should enable members to scrutinise the performance of Police Scotland. We have Gary Ritchie, who's having a sterile shift today, Divisional Commander, with us to speak to the report and answer any questions members may have. Gary?
Thanks, Chair. I want to make a kind of few general points before we get into the report, which is obviously well laid out there, but you'll understand that there's some things that I would quite like to focus on as we go through it. It's something that this is the first Police Fire and Rescue Committee that I've presented at, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but I don't make any apologies for you hearing it from me again. Crime is not the whole story for us. 80% of our calls for service are not crime related. And for me, it's very much about the threat and harm. Our crime indicators are absolutely vital in us understanding what that is. But we always need to look at the context behind that and understand that it's part of our business and not the whole story. Again, because of the reporting timelines, the figures that you have there represent a 4-month period rather than the 6-month period. I have up-to-date figures that haven't been ratified yet that perhaps can give us a more accurate picture on how things have progressed over the course of the performance year, and I'll refer to that again as we go through the report. We deal in small figures in this division, which is a fantastic thing for the area. That obviously the downside of that is that some of the percentages can look dramatic as we go through it. And just a kind of bit of general detail as far as some of the changes are concerned, and some of the categories they're entirely expected. In some categories we actually wanted to see some if you like percentage and actual rises in reported crime. But of course there are some areas of concern as well, which I'll cover. First of all, Group 1 crime. The commitment is obviously to reduce the incidence of alcohol-related violence. We look at Group 1 reported violent crime. That category is actually non-sexual crimes of violence and has grown in recent years to include some other elements there as well. But if I can just clarify exactly where we are in respect of that in each of the categories. This year we have one less murder than we had last year. We have one less culpable homicide than we had last year. We've got one less attempted murder than we had last year. We have 6 more serious assaults than we had last year at this time. All but one of those is detected. We have 2 more robberies that we had, again, all but one is detected at the moment. Where we have seen dramatic rises in this area is in the number of what's called cruel and unnatural treatment of a child cruelty cases, and significant rise of, I think, about 300% this year, which again is a dramatic percentage increase because of a small number, but it's 15 more than we had last year. At the moment, we've got in that category 19 cases as opposed to 4 last year. That's a positive. That reflects a lot of the partnership working that we've been engaging with our council partners this year in actually tackling child abuse and increasing the reporting that. Again, I don't think that figure comes close to scratching the surface of the actual instance of crime there, and we need to work harder at getting that figure up even further. And the other category there is called, quite helpfully, other Group 1 crime, and that's just to gather together, I guess, emerging crimes that would fall into that category. What we're seeing is online threats and extortion as the big instance there, and that's gone from, well, we had 1 last year and we've had 12 this year. So if you're talking in percentage terms to contribute to that 90% rise overall, then you're, 50% that rise overall, then factor in the fact that that's 1100% rise compared to last year. And again, that's a positive because that's traditionally been a bit of an invisible crime. And as our sophistication grows, unfortunately, criminal sophistication grows as well. But that's an area that we're really looking to try and understand a bit better. So it's encouraging to see the increase in reported crimes there. I can pause there if you like and take some questions, particularly on that, or I'm happy to go through the whole report.
Members' questions at this point? Graham?
Yeah, it's just, you mentioned child abuse up 300%. Was that historic? I think it was child abuse, was it? Was that historic cases coming out, or was it fresh cases?
It's actually a mix of both. The majority of them are historic. There are some that we'll detect, through the course of their engagement with partners, families in crisis, parents that are incapable, etc. So they fall into that category as well. But we've got national campaigns running at the moment, and that's going to increase the reporting of that as well. So some of them are historic.
Ian, just on the same point, I was possibly going to ask, but it sounds like you're saying, Gary, in regards to the cruelty to children, that there's been quite a degree of under detection when it comes to that. Maybe the collaborative working with partnership organisations is bringing that more to the fore. Is that the case or not? Is that just why is it such a significant difference?
Under-reporting rather than under-detection, I would say. I mean, it's crimes that just weren't reported to us. The victims are children at the end of the day. So unlikely to be able to pick up the phone in that situation and engage either the council or the police for help. There's education programs in place now that's encouraging that. But I think what we need to do as an agency and what we need to do in partnership is actually go and find the instance of this. And I think that what we're seeing here reflects the national campaigns, as we've been speaking about historic child abuse, but also I think shows, perhaps illustrates better our capacity to intervene where we've identified that there's perhaps problems in families.
So is it likely that that'll be a consistent trend, and that's not something that's got to dip back to where it was. It's got to stay there.
I would hope we would keep seeing that figure rising.
No questions at the minute. Back to you, Gary.
Okay. If I can move on through the report then, just talking about violence there. I'd mentioned the serious violence. We're talking about rises in common assaults there as well, which is minor violence. They're not recorded as Group 1 crimes. Shown there is an increase of 7.4%. We're virtually, because of some of the work that we've done recently, back on par with where we were last year. We have 3 more common assaults than we had at this time last year, which represents 0.4%. So virtually the same. Our detection rate for that is 81.9%, which is pretty phenomenal. And we don't do comparing league tables here, but just from my experience of working in other divisions across the country, that's very unusual to see such a high detection rate for common assaults. The domestic assaults, still about a third of all assaults reported. But what we've seen a rise in this year in particularly, one area is assaults on emergency workers. That's us basically. And that's only at the Galloway side of the division. Doing a bit of analysis to try and understand why that is. It might just be a blip, and I'm hoping that we'll see that figure. It's not in the last couple of months. It's certainly not growing so much, but it's hard. Even the cops don't understand why there's suddenly seems more willingness for people at the Galloway side to start fighting with them. So for me, as I said before, it's about where the threat and harm is. I think it's absolutely in the crimes that are hard to identify and hard to detect, which is in terms of Group 1, crimes of violence, cruelty to children. I think we have, and I'll touch on that as we get to it later, I think in one area of the division we have an issue with antisocial behaviour on the rise. My feeling, despite the fact that Group 1 crime looks as if it's going through the roof, I hope I've contextualised that for you, because my feeling is that we don't have an issue with serious violence in the division at all.
Members, any other questions? Stephen?
Yeah, I think it's really just if there's any more sort of detail when you look into the Annandale and Eskdale figures, because it seems to stand out quite significantly in terms of the alcohol-related offences, disorder. And I know it's something that we've discussed the area committee, just, when we look into the reporting at local level, but is there any sort of more narrative you can provide for that? I know it talks about local policing plans dedicated to the specific trouble spots, if you like, or trouble areas, if you like, but is that something you can expand upon here?
No, you're absolutely right. The increase that we've seen, particularly around antisocial behaviour, has been in the Dumfries side, Annandale and Eskdale. It seems to have borne the brunt of that. We're still, again, just put it in context, as far as vandalism is a good indicator of antisocial behaviour. We've taken a jump from the last 2 years, which were particularly low, and we clearly had some very effective prevention strategies in place then that worked. We're still about 30% lower than we were 5 years ago for that, which is encouraging. But clearly the prevention strategies that we were running over the last couple of years have, for whatever reason, not been as effective this year, so we need to look at that again. We're going to run a winter anti-violence, anti-social behaviour, if you like, initiative, whereby I'm going to be able to increase some of the number of police patrols. We're going to work in conjunction with our with the council licensing and also the licensees, the licensed premises, because when we're talking about antisocial behaviour in particular, and street violence, it tends to be round about there. We have done some detailed analysis round about our hotspot areas, But what we've also done is a bit of historic analysis round about the hotspot areas during the Halloween bonfire night, lead up to Christmas and New Year, because they're peak periods. So it's not just necessarily looking at where our hotspot areas have been over the last few months, which we will address, but also where they've been at these peak periods over the last few years. So changing tack a wee bit there to try and address that rise that we're seeing.
Thanks. I'm conscious that these figures pertain to April to July, and I'm just wondering, I mean, it won't be the main factor, but obviously there's that sort of gala season, you know, there's obviously different attitude towards public drunkenness, if you like.
Yeah.
But I was just curious, I mean, Annandale, Estile's a big area, and there's probably a few potential hotspots, but I mean, is there any more detail? Is there specific areas within that? Because it's quite a diverse region, you know, if you take it as part of an area. So I'm just wondering, is there any drill down into the actual areas within that are being affected or targeted with new initiatives?
Well, yeah, they're not subject to this report, obviously. I mean, we have identified some of the areas. I don't know whether you would normally speak about that at this meeting. I'm happy to. We're seeing a rise in Annan in that area, in particular in antisocial behaviour, and vandalism, and the Lochside, including area as well, seen a rise this year, and that seems to be where our pockets are. I think it does mention in the report that in the early part of the year, particularly around about Lochside, that was attributed to a single group that we've seemed to have some success in actually breaking up. My concern is, I don't want to get too technical here, you talk about criminal trends, you see more and more of that. I mean, you've probably seen, just as an example, the killer clowns that seem to be making an appearance just now, and luckily we haven't been affected too much by that in the area, but things like that can see a spike in these types of crime, because it's a fashionable thing to do. We saw it a couple of years ago with wheelie bin fires and things like that. So I think that's what we saw in the early part of the year in Lochside. That's probably what we're seeing just now in Annan, which makes it a wee bit easier for us to target. But if it becomes more widespread, then it's more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I take that you know, there's often a dark inspiration for these things, perhaps, but then you would maybe expect that to be across the board. But it seems to be specifically, or my concern, obviously, sort of getting more parochial, is Annandale and Estill. So why would the uptake of that particular idea get good ground there rather than in the rest of the region? You know what I mean? So I think there's one explanation might serve a general rise, but not a specifically geographically located rise in an incident. So it was just, you know, I don't know how much that helps in that respect.
No, you're right, and we need to be. That's why when we're tackling these things, a big part of our winter campaign is making sure that we get our analysis right, so that we are targeting the right areas at the right time. If we just took these figures as a whole, then we would increase patrols right across the area, and I don't think that would necessarily serve the purpose right. And then, you know, using our experience as to what tactics work best to address that. There's a section in the report there in stop search, which I understand has been a bit of a dirty word over the last few years, but the truth of the matter is that's a very, very effective intervention and prevention tactic. And our officers have lost confidence in using that as a tactic, but we've recently had some new legislation and some new training, and I'm sure that we'll see an increase in confidence in that, and that will result in the use of that tactic again to good effect. But we will target that use to the areas that actually will benefit from it. And that's so yes, as a simple answer to your question, we need to get our analysis right before we do anything.
Okay, no further questions. You anything to add, Gary?
No, do you want me to go through the rest of the report, or are we?
It was a general comment, if I may, regarding I could hang looking for a sugarly nail to hang it on, but I think I found one 3.7. Information members receive, and particularly anecdotal evidence I've received from a community council, not mine, that officers were concerned about the maintenance of and upkeep of their uniforms, and also something about the engines in cars, the use of second-hand engines. This is totally anecdotal, but I'd be grateful if that could be cleared up.
Used to be, I have to say, I mean, our cars are well maintained. I don't know any second-hand engines, but at the end of the day, they go into our vehicle workshops and whatever sorcery that they employ to make sure the cars are on the roads. I mean, it's not a policy. Honestly, Councillor, it's not something that I've heard about. As far as the uniform is concerned, police officers get their uniform replaced when they need it replaced. That's still the case.
I'll convey that information to the colleague who asked me to raise it here.
I'm sure you'll do that, Alistair. Is members happy for Gary to go through the report, or is there any other items in the report that we've got questions on? Because I'm sure you've all read it. Ronnie?
Well, Stephen mentioned it. At the area committee, we really drilled deep because it's broken down into wards. It's a lot easier to understand. And this is just a generic report. So some of the issues that we've raised in the Neil Nestdale we've looked at and hopefully some solutions. I just wanted to say well done, because I was reading here delivery of local initiatives. Some police work isn't all about arresting people. There's some preventative stuff, and you do that with the Operation Safety, do the right thing in the big world. I've been to Operation Safety in the big world, but I'm not sure of the right thing. But is that aimed at teenagers or younger people?
Yeah, that's a school-based program. Understand. So something. I mean, our engagement with local schools is really, really important to me, and something that will be preserved and enhanced through our new model. That's something that I was really keen to keep going. And these type of programs, which a lot of which are developed nationally and through our national community safety, national safer communities, and have been really effective, I think, in assisting the prevention strategy recently.
One thing that used to happen, we used to have sort of off-the-record meetings with the local inspector, share names, talk turkey, away from the public gaze. If you're at an area committee, you're not going to say anything because it's the public meeting and there's reporters there. With the proposal to do with sergeants and inspectors, not do away with them, but reduce them, that opportunity then, well, it's not been happening lately, but the opportunity seems to be less if there's not enough. So I just wondered how local members could engage with the local. I mean, I've got a good relationship with my local sergeant, but that's just me. But, in a more rounded way, less formal, is to meet with them sometime and just talk turkey, as it were.
Well, that's something I want to see more of, and that's why we made those changes. Yeah, there might be less sergeants and inspectors, but what you have now is sergeants and inspectors who are absolutely focused only in that community role. What you might have found with your sergeant or your inspector before was that they could, and John mentioned it about his constable up there being dragged away. I'm trying to put an element of protection around that and make sure that they're absolutely focused on community issues. There is a sergeant for each area committee area, and they're available to you. And if they're not available, there is a dedicated community inspector, Gordon McKnight and the Dumfries side, and Stuart McComb on the Galloway side. They do nothing but community work now, whereas before they were often dragged away doing operational stuff. I say dragged away as if that was, that's less an issue, and dragged kicking and screaming. But in actual fact, the way we've set up now, I think will give them a lot more freedom just to focus on community work. And my whole intention this, and that's a plea from me to you. Please let me know if it's not the case. My whole intention about this is to enhance that level of engagement between elected reps and communities and their local community police officers. And if that's not happening, then please let me know and we'll make sure that that is.
Members got any other questions in the report? Or anything that need clarified on it? Okay, got it. Anything else? Happy to go with the recommendations? Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report from Police Scotland for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April to 2016 to 31st July 2016 as detailed in the appendix. Agreed?
Sorry, with most service committees, the area committee, there's a section where the area committee could feed into the centre any issues that need to be recorded. That doesn't seem to happen here. I don't know if that's within the remit of this scrutiny committee or not, but it's something we could ask the officers to look at.
Andrew? That's fine. Stephen?
Yeah, just before we lose our query status, I think we're still okay. There's no minute at this meeting, and I'm just wondering, is there any?
Yes, we discussed that the other day there, and Andrew will explain.
The reason there's no minute, it's been through full council and approved because it was a 6-month gap between the previous committee to this committee. I also noticed, and I got explanation on it the other day. Thanks.
I have no business deemed urgent, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for attending.